All right. Hello. Workflow. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about today. This is I'm quite passionate about the topic of workflow because it's something I'm still working on myself. It's not something that's fluid or fixed. It's I'm constantly revising it, and I do get asked quite a lot from people, what's my own approach to workflow, and I think it's kind of important to define workflow first of all, because I think when most people ask that question, they're asking like, what am I doing in Lightroom? What packages am I using to edit my photos with, and what are my steps? And that's totally valid, and I think that's something we definitely need to get into. But I think if we only talk about workflow in terms of those steps of just what you do with a program, I think you're missing a big part. At least I feel that way anyway. And you can tell me if in the comments below if you think that's not true and I'm missing the point. But I think my point is that the old Eddie 2 years ago would have been very much like that. I would have just taken the camera, taken the shots, and then when I go to post-processing, I've paid for lots of presets and renderers and packages and LUTs, and I would just scroll through them all and find one I thought worked well for the image, and then I would render. So, you have to have a degree of taste and understand why a certain renderer works well with that image. So these things are valid, and they're definitely things I think are worth discussing in more detail further on. But I think for me, for today, I'm more interested in talking about workflow from a much broader perspective. It's something that I haven't really sort of recognized in myself until fairly recently, sort of a year ago or 6 months ago. That I think all the people's work that I really admired, they are controlling everything, and I think that kind of level of control is something to aspire to get to, because I think that is actually what really makes images sing. It's not the renderers or softwares, it's everything. It's all that whole decision making process. I think it's something that is, if there's one takeaway message from this video, it's that workflow starts before you even pick up a camera. It happens way before you enter into a post-processing software. So I think it's quite good to use real life examples. And about a month ago, 5-6 weeks ago, I was invited to a place called Glen Davis in Australia, New South Wales, and it's an old mining ruin. And a wonderful friend of mine called Mick Tate invited me along to this shoot, and because he organized it. He's got connections in the cosplay world. There was going to be this kind of crazy Mad Max kind of wastelander theme, and I've done it once before. Then I was fortunate enough to be invited again, so I definitely was going to have some fun and go and do this shoot with them. But I wanted to think about like, well, what am I going to do? What's my story? Or am I just going to turn up with my cameras and just shoot and see what happens? And I think that's a bit of a mistake. Like, have a bit more forward thinking about what you want to do with your images and what you want to see. So I think it's good to talk about this from a practical and show some images from that session and relate them back to my psychology and mentality of what I was trying to do on that day. So the first thing first was I practiced something in the night before the event that I left. I don't know if you can see the background there. I've got a mannequin up there. So I got her out and practiced some different lighting techniques. And I just wanted, because it's a freebie shoot, there's no risk here. I'm not letting down a paying client. I just thought I would experiment. And I came up with this reverse key lighting type of light setup. So you can see in this image here, I'll just show it up here. What we have is we have a Godox 8200 behind the subject, and that's the only light in the whole shot. The light that they've got on front of them is just a reflector bounced on my tripod. My tripod would be coming along with me anyway, because I was planning to do some landscape, because it's a really interesting sort of place to do some landscape work as well. But yeah, so it would be coming with me in a reflector. And I just quite liked what I got here from this little last minute kind of studio thing. So I thought if the opportunity presents itself, that's the only light setup I would do. Bare 8200, no reflector, no modifier like a softbox or an umbrella, just bare, and shooting behind them with this kind of reverse key lighting type of setup. And I learned that from a videographer. Actually, I don't see it done very often in the photography world. So I thought, that's interesting, let's try that. So that's number one. So I was already going into my shoot with this idea of what I wanted to do, and I liked the look of it in mono, so I thought that I'm going to stick with a monochrome kind of theme for this shoot. After that, I was on. It's a whole weekend that they were there. I was only there for 24 hours, so I had to be a little bit very planned with what I wanted else to do with my time there. So I bought this camera last November. I don't know if you can see that. It's the Pentax 645D. This is a beast of a camera. It's medium format, but I hadn't actually really had the chance to play with it that much, not in a portrait sense. So I thought once I've done this kind of reverse key lighting strategy, if I get the opportunity to do that, I would then just do some natural light work with this camera for portrait use. And that was it. The only other thing that I wanted to do was maybe not try and catch the cosplay people in action necessarily, in their kind of role play mantra. I wanted instead to kind of capture the person inside the outfit. So a more kind of behind the scenes kind of look or vibe to my images. And that was it. That was kind of that's my workflow. So my workflow's starting already. I'm starting to think about the gear, the cameras, the light, the lenses that I'm going to use to tell that story and all those sorts of things. And maybe approach it from a monochrome. Now, so I did shoot RAW and JPEG with this 645D. It does wonderful colors, so I didn't want to lose the option of pushing for some colors, but I did shoot the whole time monochrome. So the JPEGs on the back of the camera will reflect monochrome. And I do find that useful, even if I'm intending to shoot color. I find that a really useful thing to do because you can see light and dark easier. If you're framing up a composition and there's something really bright top left of the frame that's distracting, then you can just kind of frame a little bit differently and get rid of that distraction in your frame. So that's just like a workflow tip there that I've kind of learned, is even if you shoot color, it's not a bad idea to actually be shooting monochrome to help you frame up anyway. And you'll know when you're there if there's some beautiful colors that are going to be worth taking advantage of. You can just toggle out of it for that moment in time. But yeah, so that was it. So what I'll do is I'll stop talking now. We'll jump straight to the images. I do apologize for what you're about to see. It is these people are an eclectic, crazy bunch, but they are wonderful human beings. And yeah, it's a bit of a mix mash. I mean, I don't know if these images particularly flow very well from one to another. They are a mixture of landscape and portrait work. But all these images and many more I will link in the blog, my blog post below, if you want to see more of these images. But here's a selection of them anyway, so you can get an idea of the results. And after looking at these series of images, I'll then just talk a little bit more about workflow and finish off there. And if this video does well and people want to learn a little bit more to Lightroom and what I do in Lightroom and Photoshop and when I would jump into Photoshop and why I would jump into Photoshop for certain images, then certainly we can do videos on that as well. But I think it's just going to be too much for one video if we do all of that stuff. So let's just try and keep this one to a broader overlay. Okay, I'm rambling on. All right, let's have a look at some images. All right. So yeah, I couldn't actually finish the rest of that recording on that day. Family life got in the way, and I just things one thing after the next. I'm different clothes because it's a different day. So I just wanted to finish off this video really quite quickly. So what you're seeing here is my workflow chart. Now it's not a very good workflow chart. It's very roughly put together. I'm not an academic. It's full of loopholes and problems. I don't need that corrected, right? But maybe the purpose of this, though, is it does actually show you a little bit of how my brain thinks about things when it comes to photography. Maybe you can come up with your own workflow charts that are better for you. So yeah, you've seen those images now, and hopefully what you did see when you saw some of those images were maybe a couple of the shots where I did that reverse key light and that I tried the night before and actually acted upon during the shoot. And just stuff like that, and then you maybe hopefully saw some of the 6.4 5D portrait shots that I was taking there as well. So if there's one message to take away, it's just to have that kind of pre-visualization and sort of planning to a shoot rather than just turning up and making it up as you go along, because I think when you do that you feel a little bit more in control of your photography, and I think that's always just a really good thing rather than leaving things to chance. So anyway, let's just have a look at this flow chart here that I've got up. So we've already been over this before, the slideshow images, which is that idea of having a project, an idea, pre-visualization, and the aim of what you want. So the next part is like the intents and purposes, and what I mean by that is like where's this image going to end up? Is it for a print? Is it for a client? Or is it just a bit of fun, just something you're seeing it's not the best photo in the world, but you still want to take it and you want to share it? Okay, so let's start with the latter. Okay, this is where it kind of comes under this kind of idea of just shooting a little bit for fun, casual, maybe a bit of a documentary style, where you want to leave the image far more raw and untouched, and so maybe sook or p-sook can be useful for that. Now what those terms mean is straight out of camera or partially straight out of camera. So the difference between the two is sook has absolutely no editing past the camera, what comes out of it. P-sook means you've still taken that maybe JPEG out of the camera and tweaked it just a little bit to make it just sing a little bit better. And I don't see any problems with spending 30 seconds or 40 seconds on an edit, and that's fine. The next thing down is, do you have a suitable camera providing you with acceptable results for this type of processing or type of workflow? For me, I felt as though some of my older cameras that I was using weren't always very good at this. I think I've been a bit wrong about that. I think I recently acquired a Fuji X-T4, and they really pushed this idea of film sims really, really strong down the users' throats. But they do very good job. But I've taken what I've learned from that and applied it to some other cameras that I was using previously before, and I'm getting really much better results. So some of this was partly my own knowledge of not really understanding how to really drive some interesting straight out of camera shots. But yeah, for sure though, there could be some cameras that just aren't up to this task, in which case you're going to go down towards a raw developer or some kind of software to develop raw files. But if it does and it's capable, then it's a case of being knowledgeable to set the camera up beforehand to take a good shot in this manner. So really, essentially what you're doing is you're post-processing the image before you've taken it by setting up these things beforehand, okay? So that's kind of what sook is. And then you take the shot and then you just export it. Okay, so I don't really want to get into a JPEG versus RAW argument. We could save that for another day. But I mean, I do like this idea that sook's always been with us. I mean, back in the film days, you had Polaroid cameras that spat out a photo right there and then, and that I think was the film age version of a sook, and I think it has a merit in the photography community. Not everything has to be this masterpiece. Yeah, that's just my personal opinion on that. Moving on towards the other side of the workflow chart, we have the sort of serious client work, stuff that's maybe likely to need raw development. It could definitely go to print. And then we have the stuff where you just absolutely know you've taken something really important here. This is definitely worthy of a print, and maybe spending a lot of time and maybe using more advanced techniques than what Lightroom can offer, or maybe not necessarily more advanced, but more easier options of what Lightroom can offer in terms of the workflow and the edit process, to just have things very, very optimized and clean on layers, so you can really find things if you've went wrong rather than using a history panel. I think Photoshop for layers is very good for that. So then, yeah, you're using a raw developer. For me, it's Lightroom. It could be Capture One for you, or Affinity, or whatever you like to use. And then from that process, you're taking your raw file. You're then doing, for me, one of the first checks is like a white balance adjustment, some basic slider adjustments to bring the exposure in line as to where I want it. And then I'm choosing a render. And what I mean by this is some kind of preset or package. I mean, I've bought quite a few of them. I really find them very valuable. Let me just bring one up right now. So this is really nice images. This is a company that specializes in the kind of film simulation look. So they have for Capture One and Lightroom, not cheap, but I think that's quite worthwhile. They've got a lot of options. As you can see here, this one, I don't know if I leave it long enough, it'll start cycling through different presets here. Or do I click the bottom or click play? But yeah, you get the idea. You can click different looks and it shows you all the kind of different styles and rendering, you know. Now you could do this yourself. You don't have to buy anything. I prefer though just to pay that one-off fee for something like this, because these people are doing color science so much better than what I can do. So that's just how I approach that subject. But yeah, they've got, you know, you can check out their website here, but there are lots of different ones to use. I'm just showing you a couple that I use. The other one would be ProEdu. ProEdu are education kind of side of things, so they do more deeper tutorials as well that you can pay for, but they do lots of 3D LUTs as well. So yeah, so that's what I mean when I say choose a render or preset. And then you're kind of fine-tuning that. So you have to have taste sometimes with actually how and which one you choose. And that's another video for another time as to why this render looks better than another one, you know, so on and so forth. And then it goes, then it comes down, does the file need, you know, Photoshop work? No, then just export it. Then yes, then, you know, you do the work, you do the layers, you do the blending, and you save it as PSB or TIFF, whatever, and export it, and so on and so forth. And I'm just mentioning things like sync in here because that's one of the things I like about Lightroom is I quite often like to have my images look like a set, so 5 or 6 images all feel, you know, kind of similar. Not necessarily to how that slideshow that you just watched. That's a bit more of a chaotic, different types of things going on there. But yeah, if I do weddings and things, I want a sequence of images to all have a similar vibe and look to them. So yeah, I think workflow, it makes sense to talk about workflow and a workflow chart there. And yeah, you can come up with your own, and this isn't concrete, like I said at the beginning of the video. It's something fluid that is always kind of changing, and I'm revising constantly all the time, and it gets a little bit more specific when I'm doing certain tasks and certain jobs. But if there was, if there's one takeaway message that I would like to give people from this idea of workflow, is that it should start before you pick up a camera and click. It should start a lot more with, you know, deliberate thought process to what you want to achieve with the shoot, rather than just shooting. I mean, I do understand that there are just moments you have to capture, and you just take it in RAW, and then you see what you get later on. But you know, for the people who do, you know, if you see food photographers that are amazing, they don't just fluke it. They've been working for hours on that craft, and they understand colors, and they understand design, and they understand their setup and how they're working with things to make things look the way they want. It's all planned and done deliberately. So there's a lot of photography where, you know, you can, there's a lot more planning. I mean, for example, right over here, I know you can't see out my window, but I've got a lovely tree where birds visit every day, and I just get my camera and take a grab every now and then. But I could do better if I tried. If I thought about it, I could set up a light stand and some flash to help me when the weather's poor or whatever, or get some catch lights in the bird's eye. There's stuff I can do that I'm not doing that if I really cared about, I should implement and go with a kind of vision, you know? So yeah, I mean, that's really it. I think that just tidies up the video for part 1, at least, for workflow quite nicely. And I hope you got something from this. And please leave me a comment below if this was helpful, or you have a question, or you want to just roast me and say I'm doing everything all wrong. I don't mind. All right. Thanks very much.